I have water, thank you. Actually, I'll take it over. For fun. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Randana Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Randana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunda Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunda Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunda Bihari Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya 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 Om Namo recite the next verse together. Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayam udirayet nashta prayeshu bhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati utamashloke bhaktir bhavati naishtaki. We recite the English. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is a very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead Narayan, unto Narayan Rishi, the supremmost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author, and Srila Prabhupada, translator and commentator, by regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam, and by rendering of service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Jai. Thank you so much for coming to Srimad Bhagavatam class this morning. Srila Prabhupada is very pleased. Today we are reading from the 11th canto, chapter 28. We're still in the section about Jnana Yoga, but today we're kind of going to lean more towards the Bhakti Yoga side of things. So we're going to read verse 22 through 24. Do we usually read all the verses, right? Yeah. Bye, Max. See you in a month.
Haribol.
Okay. Everyone can take turns reading one verse.
Although thus not existing in reality, this manifestation of transformations created from the mode of passion appears real because the self-manifested, self-luminous, absolute truth exhibits himself in the form of the material variety of the senses, the sense objects, the mind, and the elements of physical nature.
Thus, clearly understanding by discriminating logic the unique position of the absolute truth, one should expertly refute one's misidentification with matter and cut to pieces all doubts about the identity of the self. Becoming satisfied in the soul's natural ecstasy, one should desist from all lust engagements of the material senses.
The material body made of earth is not the true self, nor are the senses the presiding demigods or the air of life, nor is the external air, water, or fire, or one's mind. All these are simply matter. Similarly, neither one's intelligence, material consciousness, nor ego, nor the elements of ether or earth, nor the object of sense perception, nor even the primeval state of material equilibrium can be considered the actual identity of the soul.
One who has properly realized my personal identity as a supreme Godhead, what credit is there if his senses, mere products of the material modes, are perfectly concentrated in meditation? And on the other hand, what blame is incurred if his senses happen to become agitated? Indeed, what does it mean to the sun if the clouds come and go?
The sky may display the various qualities of the air, fire, water, and earth that pass through it, as well as such qualities as heat and cold, which continually come and go with the seasons. Yet the sky is never entangled with any of these qualities. Similarly, the Supreme Absolute Truth is never entangled with the contaminations of goodness, passion, and ignorance, which cause the material transformations of the false ego.
Nevertheless, until by firmly practicing devotional service to me, one has completely eliminated from his mind all contamination of material passion, one must very carefully avoid associating with the material modes which are produced by my illusory energy.
Just as improperly treated disease reoccurs and gives repeated distress to the patient, the mind is not completely purified of its perverted tendencies, will remain attached to material things and repeatedly torment the imperfect yogi.
Sometimes the progress of imperfect transcendentalists is checked by attachment to family members, disciples, or others who are sent by envious demigods for that purpose. But on the strength of their accumulated advancement, such imperfect transcendentalists will resume their practice of yoga in the next life. They will never again be trapped in the network of fruitive work.
An ordinary living entity performs material work and is transformed by the reaction to such work. Thus, he is driven by various desires to continue working fruitively up to the very moment of his death. A wise person, however, having experienced his own constitutional bliss, gives up all material desires and does not engage in fruitive work.
The wise man whose consciousness is fixed in the self does not even notice his own bodily activities while standing, sitting, walking, lying down, urinating, eating, or performing other bodily functions. He understands that the body is acting according to its own nature.
Although a self-realized soul may sometimes see an impure object or activity, he does not accept it as real. By logically understanding impure sense objects to be based on illusory material duality, the intelligent person sees them to be contrary to the distinct form and distinct from reality, in the same way that a man is awakening from sleep views his fading dream.
Material nescience, which expands into many varieties by the activities of the modes of nature, is wrongly accepted by the conditioned soul to be identical with the self. But through the cultivation of spiritual knowledge, my dear Uddhava, the same nescience fades away at the time of liberation. The eternal self, on the other hand, is never assumed and never abandoned.
When the sun rises, it destroys the darkness covering men's eyes, but it does not create the objects they then see before them, which in fact were existing all along. Similarly, potent and factual realization of me will destroy the darkness covering a person's true consciousness.
The Supreme Lord is self-luminous, unborn and immeasurable. He is pure transcendental consciousness and perceives everything. One without a second is realized only after ordinary words cease. By him, the power of speech and the life air are set into motion.
Whatever apparent duality is perceived in the self is simply the confusion of the mind. Indeed, such supposed duality has no basis to rest upon apart from one's own soul.
The duality of the five material elements is perceived only in terms of names and forms. Those who say this duality is real are pseudo-scholars, vainly proposing fanciful theories without basis in fact.
The physical body of the endeavoring yogi who is not yet mature in his practice may sometimes be overcome by various disturbances. Therefore, the following process is recommended.
Some of these obstructions may be counteracted by yogic meditation or by sitting postures practiced together with concentration or controlled breathing, and others may be counteracted by special austerities, mantras, or medical herbs.
These inauspicious disturbances can be gradually removed by constant remembrance of me, by congregational hearing and chanting of my holy names, or by following in the footsteps of the great masters of yoga.
By various methods, some yogis free the body from disease and old age and keep it perpetually youthful. Thus, they engage in yoga for the purpose of achieving material mystic perfections.
This mystic bodily perfection is not valued very highly by those expert in transcendental knowledge. Indeed, they consider endeavor for such perfection useless, since the soul, like a tree, is permanent, but the body, like a tree's fruit, is subject to destruction.
Although the physical body may be improved by processes of yoga. An intelligent person who has dedicated his life to me does not place his faith in the prospect of perfecting his physical body through yoga, and in fact, he gives up such procedures.
And we can go ahead into the Sanskrit for verse 44. Yogacharyamimam yogi. Yogacharyamimam yogi. Vicharanmad apashraya. Vicharanmad apashraya. Nantarayar vihanyeta. Nantarayar vihanyeta. Nisprihasva sukhanubu. Nisprihasva sukhanubu. Yogacharyamimam yogi. Vicharanmad apashraya. Nantarayar vihanyeta. Nisprihasva sukhanubu. Please chant.
Yogacharyamimam yogi.
Yogacharyamimam yogi.
Vicharanmadapashraya.
Vicharanmadapashraya.
Nantarayar
Nantarayar vihanyeta.
Nisprihasva sukhanubu.
Nisprihasva sukhanubu. Yogacharyamimam yogi. Vicharanmadapashraya. Nantarayar vihanyeta. Nisprihasva sukhanubu. Yogacharyamimam yogi. Vicharanmadapashraya. Nantarayar vihanyeta. Nisprihasva sukhanubu. Okay, we can go into the word for word. Together. Yogacharyam, the prescribed process of yoga. Imam, this. Yogi, the practitioner. Vicharam, executing. Mat apashraya, having taken shelter of me. Na, not. Antaraya, by obstacles. Vihanyeti, checked. It's free from hankering. Swa, of the soul. Sukha, the happiness. Anubhu, experiencing within. And the translation by the disciples of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The yogi who has taken shelter of me, Krishna, remains free from hankering because he experiences the happiness of the soul within. Thus, while executing this process of yoga, he is never defeated by obstacles. And will someone volunteer to read the purport?
Sridhar Swami, the Supreme Lord has briefly described to Uddhava the essential wisdom of all the Upanishads, with the conclusion that pure devotional service to the Lord is the real means of ultimate liberation. In this regard, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur emphasizes that although Hatha Yogis and Raja Yogis try to make progress along their prescribed paths, they confront obstacles and often fail to achieve the desired goals. However, one who surrenders to the Supreme Lord will certainly be victorious on his spiritual path back to Godhead. So, in the purpose of the humble servants of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, the 11th canto, 28th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Jnana Yoga.
Okay, I'm going to repeat the translation and then I want to go look at another verse that's similar to this from Bhagavad Gita. The yogi who has taken shelter of me, he remains free from hankering because he experiences the happiness of the soul within. Thus, while executing this process of yoga, he is never defeated by obstacles. Can anyone guess what Bhagavad Gita verse I might pull from? What's that, the translation? I don't speak.
Atma Shochati Sama Sarveshu Bhuteshu Bhaktim Labhate Varam. So for those who attain the Brahma Bhuta or the Brahman platform of realization, they don't hanker or lament for anything, and they're equally disposed towards everyone. And therefore they reach ultimately the devotional service to Krishna.
Amazing. Should have chosen that one. No, I have another one that I'm thinking of. Any other guesses before we read it? Yeah, exactly. So we'll go ahead. What verse is that again? 259. Okay, we'll just read the translation, and the purport's really short, so we'll read that too. Though the embodied soul may be restricted from sense enjoyment, the taste for sense objects remains, but ceasing such engagements, by experiencing a higher taste, he is fixed in consciousness. And I'll go ahead and read the purport. Unless one is transcendentally situated, it is not possible to cease from sense enjoyment. The process of restriction from sense enjoyment by rules and regulations is something like restricting a diseased person from certain types of eatables. The patient, however, neither likes such restrictions nor loses his taste for eatables. Similarly, sense restriction by some spiritual process like Ashtanga Yoga in the matter of Yama, Niyama, Asana, etc., is recommended for less intelligent persons who have no better knowledge. But one who has tasted the beauty of the Supreme Lord Krishna in the course of his advancement in Krishna consciousness no longer has a taste for dead material things. Therefore, restrictions are there for the less intelligent neophytes in the spiritual advancements of life, but such restrictions are only good until one actually has a taste for Krishna consciousness. When one is actually Krishna conscious, he automatically loses his taste for pale things. The yogi who has taken shelter of me, Krishna, remains free from hankering because he experiences the happiness of the soul within. Thus, while executing this process of yoga, he is never defeated by obstacles. Okay. So, we heard yesterday all about, and these verses today also describe the difference between spirit and matter. Matter is temporary and spirit is eternal. This is the main difference. And so, even though we have material senses, while we're in this material world, we have material senses, and so we're trying to seek pleasure through these material senses. But what did I just say? Material things are temporary, so it won't last. But as human beings, we're pleasure-seeking by nature. As living entities, as jiva souls, we're pleasure-seeking by nature. So we can't just give up this search for happiness. Okay. Looking for happiness in material things can have a very adverse effect on our spiritual life. I don't know if any of you have experienced that. Have you? You can shake your head. You don't have to give examples. How has that made you feel? If you had an experience where you're trying to practice Krishna consciousness, but you have this material attachment and it's pulling your mind a little bit, how do you feel when you're experiencing that? Does anyone want to share? Frustrated, disturbed. Yeah, these are the main feelings. Because we know that, what is wrong with me? I know this isn't going to last. I know it's not even going to satisfy me or live up to my expectations. But for some reason, we're still chasing these things. Conflicted. That's a very good word. Even the Vedas, in the Vedas, they give us prescriptions to enjoy material nature. But the purpose of these prescriptions and these regulations isn't so that we just stay enjoying material nature. It's so that we gradually become elevated to the point of service to Krishna. It prescribes that if you want material benefits, then you worship a particular demigod in a particular way according to very strict rules and regulations. This helps to get us used to accepting, the Vedas as an authority, and get us used to accepting a higher power as somebody who, we go to, ultimately for the goal of leading us to take shelter of Krishna. who is the source of all of these demigods, who is the source of all pleasure that we're seeking in this world. Everything that gives us any happiness is emanating from Krishna, who is Bhagavan, who is the one who possesses all opulence, fame, beauty, strength, riches, knowledge, and then renunciation as well. It's quite powerful to be able to have all of these opulences and still internally be renounced. So we can go to Krishna for the fulfillment of our material desires. We can go to Krishna for the fulfillment of our spiritual desires. We can go to Krishna for everything. That won't always look how we want it to. Sometimes Krishna will fulfill our material desires in such a way that makes us not want them anymore. He'll say, okay, you can have this, like maybe classic example, somebody wants to enter Grihastha ashram, and so they enter Grihastha ashram, and then they have like bills to pay, and they have, kids to take care of, and yeah, it's sweet, it's service, but at the same time they're thinking, dang, life was good when I was brahmacharini. So in that way we can even make advancement through having our material desires fulfilled, or he'll fulfill our material desires in ways that just bring us happiness, bring us pleasure, and bring us closer to him. Like, I have an example. It's not a material desire, it's a spiritual desire of Krishna very strongly fulfilling a desire that I had, which was to take initiation in Alachua. I wouldn't even allow myself to dream that could be a possibility, because my guru hadn't been to Alachua in many years, and I just didn't think it would happen. So it was such a deep desire in my heart, but I didn't even let myself think about it. But then it happened, and it was the most perfect, most beautiful experience that I could have imagined for myself. And I'm sure you guys must have experienced Krishna fulfilling your desires in beautiful ways, unexpected but perfect ways. Anybody want to share any experiences of that? Some desire that you had that was just fulfilled by Krishna. Ashta and then Gopal.
So I think it was like in February last year, so more than a year ago. So a few things happened, and I was like in a fight with my parents, and everything was just kind of really bad. So I was really anxious and frustrated, and just experiencing a lot of rage and pain. So it's just I remember being in the bathroom on the floor and kind of crying and and I started chanting Nrsimha pranams, and I was like, Nrsimha Dev, please take me somewhere far away. And then a month later I was in Poland on my way to America, and it's
Wow.
it's so crazy how he literally took me as far as possible, and it was I wasn't thinking that something like that could have happened. So now I'm here, stuck, can't go anywhere. Thank you, Krishna.
Surrounded by friends, people that love
Surrounded
you.
by friends.
Thank you.
Yeah, little over 20 years ago, I came into a little bit of money. I had investment with my father and my brother, and so I started looking for some place to live around Gainesville. And I got this devotee realtor, and he was driving me all over the place every day. There's only one place I saw that I could afford that I would really like to live there, and somebody beat me to it.
Oh.
And so he was devotee. I told him, and he drove me all over the place. So I gave him $108, and then it fell through. And he called me up, and so I ended up getting it anyways.
Oh, wow. That's so nice. Any other examples, please?
Yeah.
Love to hear these stories. They're so inspiring.
I just thought of one. I think it was 2017 or 16. I received in my email or my text that the King of Puri was coming to San Antonio, Texas. And I was like, wow, that's so nice. We could welcome him on behalf of Prabhupada and ISKCON. put a garland, Maha garland on him. And that was a month before he was coming. And it was just a thought, a desire, desire of mine that, it's so rare opportunity. How often Singapore comes to the US, what to speak of city, right? So it's just a thought and my sincere desire for Srila Prabhupada, and I forgot about it. So 1 month and a half later, there was our Sunday feast program, so afterwards, there was a knock at the door. We're just cleaning up. Somebody was knocking. I thought somebody forgot something, an umbrella or a hat. So I opened the door and there was like 3 representatives of the Hindu temple, near the local Hindu temple there. And they said, and one of them was lady that I recognized because sometimes she shows up for our Sunday feast as well. So I was like, hey, what's her name? Prema something. What's her name? And I said, hey, how you doing? I didn't see you for a while. She said, oh, I'm here with 2 gentlemen from Hindu temple. They would like you to sing kirtan, because she knew about our kirtans. They would like you to sing kirtan when the King of Puri comes tomorrow. And then I was like, oh my God, it's tomorrow, and they're coming, and she I guess was connecting 2 and 2, but that was their entry. The real reason, they're very smart. The real reason that they came is because she knew we had Jagannath Devis.
Wow.
So they got a full package. They got me and they got Jagannath.
Jagannath arranged this whole thing.
Yeah, the whole thing. And I was like blown away. So next day I was like singing. There was kirtan.
Wow.
And the King of Puri was coming. And our Jagannaths were there on the altar. And then he went to offer the full arti to our Jagannath. And I was like, wow. I was like, Kamini, look at this.
Wow.
He's offering the full arti to our Jagannath. It was like equal to installation. Well, Jagannath doesn't need installation, but how many Jagannath sets of Jagannath deities that the King of Puri offered? There's not that many in the world. So these Jagannath became, after that, they became even more special.
Yeah, wow.
So it was a wonderful way that simple desire just unfolded in most amazing ways.
Thank you so much for sharing that. That's beautiful. It's described that Krishna is an ocean of rasa. So every single one of these stories and all the stories that weren't mentioned that you're just holding dear to your heart, Krishna knows, and he's personally arranging everything to happen for you, personally arranging everything so that you come closer to him, you take shelter of him more and more, your relationship with him becomes sweeter and sweeter. It's amazing how detailed and precise he is in each and every one of his relationships with us. I think that's so beautiful. And then I wanted to speak on the fact that we are his parts and parcels. We are small, infinitesimal parts of this Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. And there's a comparison made of a tree. And he is the root of the tree, and we are like the leaves and the branches. So when we're seeking happiness on our own accord for ourselves, it's like watering the leaves and the branches of a tree. It doesn't really do much for the tree. It doesn't do much for the leaves and the branches. Maybe externally they'll be a little shinier because there's some water on them, but it'll dry up. But when we water the root of the tree, when we serve Krishna, who is the root of this tree, that's when we can actually be fulfilled. That's when the happiness and the bliss and the service is spread throughout the entire tree, and we can fully experience the fruit of our service. But we're conditioned, so we don't remember that. We don't realize that. We think, I am the enjoyer. I'm the one that should be happy. I'm the one whose senses should be please, and therefore we suffer. This is the reason for our suffering. This is the whole point. It's said in Bhagavad Gita 5:22, Yehi samsparsha javoga dukkha yonaya evate. So samsparsha ja, contact with material senses. Bhoga, enjoyment. So we're seeking enjoyment from contact with the material senses, but dukkha, yonai evate, this is the dukkha, distress, yonai, this is the source of our distress, is by seeking this enjoyment through contact with material senses. The whole translation is an intelligent person does not take part in the sources of misery which are due to contact with the material senses. Such pleasures have a beginning and an end. Very interesting. The sources of misery, such pleasures have a beginning and an end. So these pleasures that we're seeking are literally the sources of misery because they have a beginning and an end, because they're temporary. They can't satisfy us fully. And so, we're souls. We're eternal. We're eternal living entities. We're eternal parts and parcels of Krishna. We're eternal servants of Krishna. Naturally, we're full of knowledge and full of bliss. Why don't we experience that here? We're disconnected from our service. We're trying in Krishna consciousness, we're trying to gradually reestablish that connection. And it can be difficult, but it's our constitutional nature, it's our position as souls. So it's difficult at first because of this conditioning that we're stuck with for now. But as we practice, it becomes more and more sweet and feels more and more natural. And our enjoyment increases unendingly, eternally. Our enjoyment becomes eternal, like Prabhupada said, stay high forever, no more coming down. I don't know how many of you have ever taken intoxication. This quote is in reference to getting high, to being intoxicated, which is probably one of the most the highest sensual experiences that people have in this material world. People are chasing that and chasing that and chasing that, but Prabhupada is telling us, you can stay up there forever and you don't have to come down. In fact, you just keep getting higher and higher. I've experienced this in Krishna consciousness. I've never been so happy in my life, and every day is better and better, and every year I feel more and more like myself, more and more conscious and aware and peaceful. And we can all have that here in this material world even. And the way to do that is by using this material world in service for Krishna. When we use this material world, the material resources that we're given in service to Krishna, they become spiritualized, they become transcendental. They develop that quality of being eternal. Maybe the actual microphone that I'm using will one day break, but the service that is imbued in this microphone and that, in this room will never be lost. I was in Bhakti Center recently, and His Holiness Radhanath Swami was speaking. And he was talking about a flower that the pujari was offering on the altar, and he said that we're like this flower. This flower will one day decay. And this is the material body. And it's supposed to. It's supposed to be beautiful for some time and then, decay and go away. But the service with which we offer this flower is eternal. Actually, this is how we, people always talk about being present, being in the present moment. What does that even mean? What does it mean to be in the present moment? From my perception and my realizations that I've been having, it means that the present means to be in the eternal, actually. I'm the most present when I'm aware of the eternal nature of my service to Krishna. I'm aware of the eternal nature of this darshan that I'm taking right now, or this Maha Mantra that I'm chanting right now. That is when I'm the most present. Eternality exists in the present moment. We can only experience it in the present moment. Does that make sense? So when we're chanting and when we're doing service, when we're offering arti, when we're picking flowers for Guru Puja, when we're sweeping the temple room floor, if we can just remember that this service is eternal and it is the source of my bliss, it is the source of any happiness that I could ever experience in this world. We are in the eternal. It's amazing. And in that eternal, we can experience unending bliss, unending happiness. Yeah. I thought of this verse also. Sarvapadi vinirmuktam tatprapena nirmalam rishikesha rishikesha sevanam bhaktir uchite. Okay, and this it says bhakti, or devotional service, bhakti yoga, the highest perfection of our existence. This is what we're chasing. This is what we are here because we all want to develop prema bhakti. We all want to develop pure love of Krishna, pure unending devotional service. So bhakti, this bhakti that we're chasing, or devotional service, means engaging all of our senses in the service of the Lord, the master of all senses, Rishikesh. When the spirit soul, this verse continues, when the spirit soul renders service to the Supreme, there are two side effects. One is that he is free, or she is free from all material designations. And the second is that simply by being engaged in the service of the Lord, our senses become purified. Can you go back up to the verse, please? Yeah. So, the yogi who has taken shelter of me remains free from hankering because he experiences the happiness of the soul within. This is what it means to be free from all material designations and our senses to be completely purified, is that we're not identifying any longer with the temporary sense gratification that we get from touch or taste or smell. We're identifying with the satisfaction that we get from service to Krishna. This is bhakti. This is the goal of our lives. And we can always experience that. We can just remind ourselves anytime. I mean, we're living in an ashram, most of us. I think, yeah. I mean, even if we're not living in Krishna house, our homes are ashrams. You know, we're practicing, we're wearing tulsi beads. You know, we're making this the goal of our lives. So everything that we do can be dovetailed in service to the Supreme. And then we're completely in the spiritual world, where we can always remember that eternal presence, that eternal moment, and we can stay there and we can meditate on that and we can chant japa there and we can clean the temple there in that space of eternality, and know that none of our devotional credits are ever lost. It stays with us and it's only growing and growing and growing. Yeah. So this is what I wanted to share with everybody today. Open for discussion now. Arisham has a question.
Thank you for the class. You've mentioned that since you've joined Krishna consciousness, it's been growing and growing, and you've been becoming happier and happier. I'm sure all of us here can relate to that, but the question is, we also see devotees coming and leaving, not taking up Krishna consciousness. The question is, in these two cases, what has to happen internally in a person, whether for him to stay and then versus also for him to leave, what happens inside, and externally, if there's any effect also that affects that two path.
Internally and externally, in both cases. I would say internally is a little easier for me to think about. It requires, I have a lot of words coming to my mind. Sincerity is one major thing that sticks with me, but also, I mean, strength, good association, this is desire, really. One time somebody asked Srila Prabhupada, what do you remember? They said, like, what is the most important thing in Krishna consciousness or something like that? And people thought he was going to say chanting. He thought he was going to say like Harinam or reading the books or preaching. And that's not exactly the verbatim the question that they asked. But anyways, it was something along those lines. And his answer was one word. It was desire. This is what is required to stay in Krishna consciousness, is a strong desire. And desire comes from knowledge. If we don't have knowledge of the eternal nature of this process, and we don't have knowledge of the bliss that we can experience in Krishna's service, then our desire won't be strong enough to keep us here. So we have to be open to learning, open to hearing, and receiving that. And then our desire can become stronger, our desire to know Krishna. And that will keep us here. Krishna gives us glimpses of his mercy. Like in the beginning, you get like this very amazing taste for Krishna consciousness. Many people do. And that's what keeps people going for so long, is that like desire to experience that over and over again. And we do. And then, so what sends people away is a lack of understanding of the happiness that we can gain from this process, and therefore a lack of desire to reach that. And then externally, I mean, externally, I think we need to do our part to make sure everyone else feels welcome. But I mean, if all devotees cooperate and we're all, striving for those good qualities, and we can really be there for one another, then I think devotees have a higher chance of sticking around. Sorry if that was a long answer. Yeah.
Brahmatirtha Prabhu often shares that when he first went to the Mayapur festival and everyone was trying to tell him different things, the most important, he asked Prabhupada, what is the most important thing? And then Prabhupada had said that association. And so he always emphasizes, like Brahmatirtha Prabhu shares that point, that having association of good people brings about that desire or that curiosity, like these people are experiencing something higher, like how can I? So what sends people away is that not being careful enough to avoid offenses to other devotees. And when we do that, like when we're not respectful, then Krishna, like the desire also goes away, that the hankering for some spiritual happiness goes away, and we think we can become happier elsewhere. So that externally we have to be careful.
Yeah, so this is what we can do externally, is mind our association. I heard one time, Krishna consciousness is difficult even with association, but it's impossible without association. So you might want to stick to association. Any other comments or questions, discussion points?
Yeah, just about association, Prabhupada says that if you think you can do it on your own, you're living on hallucination.
Thank you guys so much for hearing my class, and I hope to improve more and more in the future. Thank you. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Take